So I think there are basically four things that we are currently working hard on, and we have been doing so for quite some time now. I think the first one I can sort of give you a little bit of flavor is sort of the preparations for actually us buying the assets from the three banks in question, the asset preparation. And quite explicitly what we're doing there, we are spending time and trying to understand as much as possible in terms of the cases that we in the end will actually become owner of, that we're buying. Trying to understand two basic things. One is, what will we do with the cases when we will own them, based on preliminary information, because it's not until we actually have the actual files we can in the end come up with the final decision of what really to do. But we can learn as much as possible even before to make sure that we are prepared for it. So we're trying to establish, at least for the majority of the values we're going to take over, a business case for each of the cases or exposures we're going to take over, and look at it from the perspective of getting it from not only one bank but actually three banks. What can we do then, and what are the degrees of freedom we can do with that? That's sort of building up, I would say, what in the end will become the business plan or the strategy of BMC. It's sort of build up case by case in such a way. The other part of that preparation is understanding the financial consequences for us to own them. Are there some parts which are actually performing to some extent? Are there some cash flows coming in? Are there cash flows going out? Do we have to spend money on those things to, for instance, make sure that properties are not deteriorating? Do we have to invest more in order to get any values back, and so on? So trying to get our understanding on what the consequences are of actually owning those assets is sort of the other thing that we do. And you can call that a preparatory due diligence or preparation work. Same thing. That's what we are spending quite a lot of time and research on, and have done so basically now since we met last, in a way. There is also another thing in terms of the asset or the transfer preparation that we're working on, and that's of course the legal side of this, the contracts, the contract catalogs, which is going to be sort of an asset purchase agreement, and then there will be sort of different agreements which are basically laying out the type of support that we have to buy from the banks during a transition period in order to make sure that we're not destroying any values in the actual transfer. It relates to, reporting IT system support, that we will not build up our own sort of bank scale IT environment here, of course, because that would be just too extra. We will buy that service, and in the transition time we probably have to buy that from each of the banks until we find sort of one common platform which we migrate to. And there are other things that we're also going to need from the bank. So making sure that we design all that and making sure everybody knows how this is going to work when we start taking over that's another big effort we're doing. And then the third thing that goes into this is actually the actual, should we call it, work planning around how we do the physical transfers of the files in. There is one thing which is basically that we can agree and buy, take over the commercial and legal risk and all that, but that's also a very important step. That's how are those files actually going to be transferred over? What is going to be prepared in the banks first for all this to sort of be in a way that all the documentation is there, the files come in the format that we can sort of start using it immediately, and we can lay out basically the time plane around that. So that we are working, we have designed basically what we would call a handover protocol. So it's clear basically what the bank has to prepare on their side, what we have to do on our side, and making sure that there is actually a handover process and no values get destroyed in between here. And that's very important because, in the end we have to protect as much of the values we can when we actually do this. So I would say those are the main things when it comes to the asset preparation. There's sort of three things. It's sort of the, should we call it case by case consequence of owning it, the actions we're going to take in the financial side, it's the contracts that we're working on, and it's sort of the actual handover, should we call it, protocol and planning around that.